Hey there, it's Alana, and I received a good question about how do you make your Excel spreadsheets prettier, and make them look more finalized, like something you would turn in. And of course, it varies from spreadsheet to spreadsheet, but there are some basic things that you want to know that hopefully I'll be able to show you in this video. For one thing, you want to be able to have it so that the person who's looking at your spreadsheet, in most cases in my course, it'll be me that's looking at your spreadsheet, but whomever you're going to share it with, to be able to kind of spot things right away, to look for stuff, right? And to know what they're doing. Like this is a particular problem I had, parts A, B, and C, and I kind of, since C was really long, I put in a text box and wrote in that. You don't have to do it that way. You can also write in the cells themselves. Here, let me show you real quick. So if I want this same bit to show up in this cell, it comes as this big long thing. So you can play with wrapping text or not wrapping text to make it seem longer. You can merge cells. So if I highlight all these cells and I click this merge and center business, then there they are, and it's a lot, it's just as nice in a way as the text box itself would be. So that's the wrap text, don't wrap text. So if you do not wrap text, it just makes it this big long thing. And then you wrap it. There you go. Cool. So that's another way. So for writing a lot of text, either write it in the cells themselves. So write text in the cells themselves, etc., 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 and it will either wrap around or won't, etc. Or you can use the text box. Text box is under the insert menu, right over here, text box. And you can make a box, make it bigger, make it smaller, whatever, and write away in that. Okay, so that's how to make your writing part look prettier. What about other stuff? What about, for example, a table? Like, how do I make it so that these are all width appropriate and all that good stuff? Because usually when you type in an Excel spreadsheet, it's making everything the same narrow width, which isn't really what you want. So what I can do is I can highlight on these cells, actually these columns. I highlight all of them and I double click, and it makes them, oops, you make it so that the guy right there is, do you see how when I let my mouse hover, it becomes this double-sided arrow? You kind of make it hover between the lines between the columns. So like between the C column and the D column, there's a little line. If you hover over that, double click there. Now if you're thinking, oh, I don't like how wide that is, I want that a little bit wider. Well, then just get to that double-sided arrow and click and drag. Get to this double side. So click on that column, click and hold down, and there you go. Right? So I'm letting it hover around those lines in between the columns. And if I don't like all these, you see how there's all those cells there? If you don't like all that, you can just highlight all of them and click merge and center. And you don't even have to center. You can do it on the left. That's just a hotkey way to do it. Okay. Oopsie, cancel. So I want it on the left. That's all in the alignment. So I'm using this home panel a lot to help me. There are other ways to get to all of this. It's all through formatting and stuff like that. But I find it quick and easy to use these quick numbers, or excuse me, quick references up here in the ribbon. That's what this is called, the ribbon. All right, now, what about the fact that the words are all on the left and the numbers are all on the right? That's kind of a cue to you that this is text and this is numbers. But of course, you might not like that. So if you want to make them all centered, then you just highlight all of them and then you click right here in the center, see the alignment? It makes it center. So now everything is centered in its column. It's kind of prettier. But I still don't like how this is all one thing when really this is a table here. So I want to change it so that I've got some formatting. And you can play around with your borders right in here. So you can make it so that you have different borders for different things, right? So let's say I want to do all borders. There you go. Now everything's got a border. And if I want this border right here, that horizontal line right there, to be extra thick, so I'm going to highlight right there and right click, and then I'm going to go to, where's the borders? Oop, there it is. Up here over here in the pull down menu. More borders right there. And it's going to bring up a menu. Hold on, it's going to take a second. There it is. And then I'll click on this horizontal line right here, and let's say I want to make it a really thick border. And then I'll click again on the horizontal line, and there it is. Right? So it's technically in the Format Cells menu is what you're doing here, but I'm playing around. And if you don't want all of it in black, say, I can go back to Format Cells and I can pick a color. I mean, it's automatically black, but suppose I want gray. I like that better. So I'll do all the outlines, everything in gray. And then I'll make this middle one. Oh, no, I don't want to do that again. Say, okay, that's going to make that thick one I made disappear, but that's okay. I'll bring it back. So then I can go to Format Cells, and I want that middle line. I'm going to unclick it, make it really thick, click it back. Say, okay. And there it is. So now I made them gray. I could do that. Or I can highlight. Let's say I want, I don't know, a little bit of color. There, now it's blue. Or I want the titles to be blue, but I want the rest of it to be white. Right? So you can see what I'm doing. I'm highlighting and then using these panels up here to help me. They're really just quick references for things that are available in a more elaborate formatting panels, but they work. Now these ones, so for example, I've got these relative frequencies. These are 2 decimal places, which that's how many of these decimal places are. But if I want to give more or less decimal places, there's a quick way to do it over here. So this one makes more, see? And this button over here makes less. Or you can just right click, format the cells, and you can say number, I want 3 decimal places, 4 decimal places, and so on. Another good one might be the percentage right here. So if I highlight all of these and I right click Format Cells, I can say, hey, I want those to be percentages, right? And I only want no decimal places. Now the only issue with that is the way that I calculated it. It did it by multiplying by 100. See that? So I don't really need to multiply by 100. I can just get rid of this part. And there you go. And then I go over here, double click. Ta-da. Oh, but see what it did? It kept that thick margin in between. That's okay. So you just go to your borders, more borders, and then you click on that middle one again and see how it's now a thin line. So say okay, and there you go. Now it's back to the thin lines. So basically I'm fiddling around with my menus. Now with the graphs, you can kind of click and drag them around. Like let's say I want it to be longer and skinnier, right? Shorter and fatter, etc. You can fiddle around with how you make them look. And then you have the color luxury car, sports car. You need that in this case. And I already showed you, but when you click on the chart, this little menu tool shows up, this chart tool. So you have design, which is I can change the coloring, or I have layout and I can pick titles and change the titles, change the labels, that kind of thing. So that's all in there. Ooh, you can add grid lines. See, let's see, I'll add vertical grid lines. There they are. So now I've got a grid. And there's tons more to play with. Honestly, I only touch the very bare minimums generally of what you guys need, just because most of the stuff you don't need to fuss with, but you can play around in here forever. I mean, you can make your fonts different and all that stuff. The one thing that I will say is that you want to remember that whatever you do, you want it to be easy for the person to read. It's all well and good to say, oh, I want to make everything a different color. I want to make all my fonts in red. Let me just show you what that would look like. It makes it a lot harder to read and a lot harder to understand. So be careful with playing around with it too much, because you want it to be prettier, but you don't want to go so overboard that it makes it hard to read or distracting. Now let me see if there's anything else over here. I'll see blood type right there. Like right here, there's a table. You can't really see it very well. So I could give it some borders, right? Outline, inside, all of it. Then I could make it so that it's centered for all of them. I can highlight these so that they're easier to spot, say, something like that. I don't like how small these are, so I could change my font size to something bigger so it's easier to read, stuff like that. That's all stuff that you can do up here in this menu system. Right? This button, by the way, makes their font size bigger. This button makes them smaller. Right? It's very Alice in Wonderland. One button to make you larger and one button to make you small. Not to quote Jefferson, Starship or whatever. All right. So I hope that helps you give a sense of how to make things a little bit prettier for yourself. Because of course, when you use Excel for your work or for school, you're going to want it to be clear and understandable to whomever's looking at it. And a lot of people might not have skills with Excel or be aware of how it should look. Right. So there we go. Automatic outline inside. Done. Cool. All right, I hope that helps. Oh, and before I go, one last thing. Notice how you want tabs. You really do want different tabs. For every problem, you want it to be on its kind of its own thing. So this was an old assignment, but I had one problem here and I have all the parts and they're clearly labeled, and then one part here and then they're all the parts clearly labeled. And in my course, of course, you want to be typing everything that I type and answering questions and, writing up the explanations if they're needed and so on. Okay. Oh, one other thing. I just thought of it. The histograms by default are this kind of giant blue blob, which is all well and good, and you can do that if you like, but I personally don't like the fact that I'm missing the borders between them. So if you click on that and you click on, well, actually you can just right click and let me think. I think it's under Format Data Series. Yeah, that's where it is. And I can add a border color. Right now it's automatic and it's automatically blue, which makes it blend in with everything else. So I don't really like that. So I'm going to click on solid line. I'm going to make it black. And let's see what else. Border style. I don't really want a compound type. I want it to be a thick line. That's fine, but I want it to be thicker. So let me see that and say close. And there. So now you can see there's some black lines in there. Me personally, I think that's a lot easier to read. And I'm not even happy with how thick those are. I'm going to go back. Border styles. Let's beef it up. Really make it thick. There we go. Right? Nice and quite frankly, a little bit easier to understand than the giant blue blob. Right? So if you want to do that, that's good. And there's more stuff you can play around with. Like I said, you can make every single bar its own color if you want. You just click and then click again on each individual bar, and you can format that data point. Point mean that one bar. And you can change the fill color. So I'm going to solid fill it. Instead of blue, I choose yellow. There you go. Right? It's not even hard to do. Okay. All right. I hope that helps.